This year, Clint Eastwood turned 94. Most men at that age slow down, reflect, and start letting go. But Clint Eastwood, he's not most men. He's grit in human form. A living symbol of endurance. A man who's been rewriting the rules of age, legacy, and passion for nearly a century. And nowhere is that spirit more alive than in his garage. Take this. One day, Clint was offered $4.5 million for a single car. A 1965 Shelby Cobra. He bought it decades ago for just $7,500. He turned the offer down without blinking, because to him, that car wasn't for sale. It wasn't just metal and leather. It was a memory, a piece of his story. Each car in Clint Eastwood's collection is like that, rare, personal, and powerful. Together, they tell the story of how a man can build not just wealth, but legacy. So today, we're stepping inside the garage of a legend to explore 10 of the rarest, most iconic cars owned by Clint Eastwood. And trust me, every one of them has a story worth remembering. 10. 1932 Ford Roadster. Before Clint Eastwood was a Hollywood legend, he was just a kid from California. Not a straight-A student, not a golden boy, just a restless teenager who loved jazz clubs, late nights, and fast cars. In the 1940s, the hot rod movement was exploding across California. Old Ford Model Ts and As were being stripped down, rebuilt, and reborn with bigger engines. They weren't just cars anymore. They were freedom on four wheels. Clint wanted one desperately, but back then, he was broke. He picked up odd jobs, lifeguard, golf caddy, anything that paid a few dollars. Still, the dream was out of reach. He could only stand on the sidelines, watching others race past in their roaring Fords. Years later, Hollywood changed everything. And the first thing Clint did? He bought the car he could never afford, the 1932 Ford Roadster. This wasn't just another classic. It was the symbol of the hot rod era. Pure speed, pure rebellion, pure California. Even today, a well-built Roadster can hit 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. That's faster than many modern cars. For Clint, owning it meant more than nostalgia. It was proof that some dreams don't fade. They just wait for the right time. The 32 Ford Roadster isn't just a machine in his collection. It's a time capsule. A reminder of the boy who once stood on the beach, watching cars roar by, promising himself that one day he'd catch up. 9. 1976 Ferrari 365 GT4 Berlinetta Boxer. If you thought Clint's Ford Roadster was fast, think again. Because the moment he stepped into his 1976 Ferrari 365 GT4 Berlinetta Boxer, speed took on a whole new meaning. It was Paul Newman. Yes, that Paul Newman, who convinced Clint to buy it. In 1977, he finally did. A scarlet Italian masterpiece born from Formula One technology, wrapped in a wedge-shaped body that screamed rebellion and precision. This wasn't just any Ferrari, it was the brand's first mid-engine road car, a move that changed the supercar world forever. The 365 GT4 was where Ferrari's racing DNA bled into the streets, a machine that bridged the gap between the racetrack and reality. Clint's car was something even rarer. Finished in Rosso Corsa, it featured a Scaglietti Spider conversion, one of only 3 in the entire world. When this Ferrari passed by, people didn't just stare, they remembered. It was a rolling symbol of Ferrari's golden era, raw, untamed, and impossibly elegant. But even legends have preferences. Clint loved everything about the car, except the roof. So, in 1978, he had it removed, transforming the Ferrari into a one-of-a-kind, open-top beauty. For nearly a decade, it was his ultimate joyride, until he sold it in 1985. Still, that Ferrari wasn't just a car in his collection. It was proof that Clint Eastwood didn't just live the American dream. He drove it, sometimes in Italian red. 8. 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB. By 1966, Clint Eastwood wasn't just a rising star. He was Hollywood's new gunslinger. After a fistful of dollars, and for a few dollars more, his face was known across continents. So when Sergio Leone began work on the final part of the trilogy, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he wanted Clint back at any cost. And I mean any cost. They begged him to return. They offered more money, a bigger cut of the profits. But Clint said no. He was tired of the desert, tired of the poncho. Then came the offer he couldn't refuse, a brand new Ferrari 275 GTB. Imagine that, a gleaming Italian masterpiece traded for one final duel under the Spanish sun. That was all it took. Eastwood accepted. The car arrived in gunmetal gray, but Clint wasn't a fan. He took it straight to the legendary customizer George Barris, the custom king of Hollywood. Barris stripped the paint and gave it a full rebirth, a shimmering metallic green, sleek, elegant, and unlike any other Ferrari on the road. Under the hood, a 3.3-liter V12 roared to life, delivering 300 horsepower. It was aerodynamic perfection. Long nose, short tail, pure power. Barris even added a CB radio, a cutting-edge toy of the 1970s, because of course Clint wanted to talk to the road itself. But here's the twist. Clint doesn't own it anymore. In 1980, the car crossed the ocean, finding a new home in Europe. Today, it rests at the Musée de Muriot in Switzerland, a museum piece, frozen in time. A car once traded for a role that made movie history. A car that turned the man with no name into a man with one unforgettable Ferrari. 7. 1955. Cadillac Eldorado Series 62. Convertible. Before the fame, before the Oscars, before the legend of Clint Eastwood was written, there was Maggie. It was the spring of 1953 when Clint went on a blind date with a young secretary named Maggie Johnson. And unlike most blind dates, this one clicked. By October, they were engaged. By December, married. And 2 years later, they brought home their newest prize, a 1955 Cadillac Eldorado Series 62 convertible. Back then, it was more than a car. It was a statement. Sleek tail fins, white wall tires, and a 270 horsepower V8 that purred like old Hollywood itself. At $6,286, it wasn't cheap. But to Clint and Maggie, it was worth every cent. The Eldorado became a symbol of their early years together. The drive through California, the sun-bleached roads, the quiet moments before the fame took over. Maybe that's why Clint never forgot it. Decades later, in 1989, he starred in Pink Cadillac, a wild action comedy about a bounty hunter and a runaway woman. The movie? Not his best. But the car? A stunning 1959 pink Cadillac DeVille that stole every scene it touched. It was as if, even then, Clint was chasing the memory of that first Cadillac, the one that carried two young dreamers toward a future neither of them could have imagined. E6. Austin Healey. In the early 1950s, speed was still a luxury. Most cars struggled to reach 70 miles per hour, and even that felt daring. But then came Donald Healey, a British engineer with a bold dream to build a car that could break the 100-mile barrier. He called it the Austin Healey 100. It made its debut at the 1952 Motor Show, and it was love at first sight. Sleek, elegant, fast. The car didn't just turn heads, it made headlines. A year later, it roared into the 24 hours of Le Mans, holding its own against Europe's finest. And from that moment, the Austin Healey wasn't just a car, it was a statement. By 1955, Healey wanted more, so he built it. A new version, tighter suspension, 110 horsepower, and a badge that said it all, 100M. The M stood for modified, but it might as well have stood for magnificent. This was the sports car of the rich and fearless. Steve McQueen had one, and in 1958, so did Clint Eastwood. That same year, Clint got his big break with Rawhide. Hollywood was opening its doors, and Clint arrived behind the wheel of British speed. Today, the Austin Healey 100M is a collector's treasure, with prices soaring past $200,000. But back then, for Clint, it was more than a car. It was a symbol of arrival, proof that the lifeguard from California had made it. 5. Jaguar XK150 Roadster. 2 years after getting the Austin Healey, Clint Eastwood decided to add another classic British car to his collection, a Jaguar XK150 in 1960. He bought it for approximately $5,400, and it became one of his most favorite cars over the next 2 decades. Built between 1957 and 1961, Clint's Jaguar XK150 was the last of Jaguar's original XK lineup and one of only 9,385 units ever made. It's powered by a 3.8-liter engine that produces 220 horsepower. It also features a 4-speed manual transmission and a top speed of around 135 miles per hour. After Clint bought it, he made several customizations, including a custom wooden steering wheel, wire wheels, chrome wing mirrors, and auxiliary driving lights on the front bumper. He also upgraded the original heater and installed a Motorola AM/FM radio. But here is the best part. Clint was so obsessed with the car that he decided to give it screen time in Play Misty for Me, the first movie he ever directed. For fans of Jaguar, the XK150 holds a special place in history as it came just before the game-changing E-Type. Despite its short production run, it remains one of the most sought-after British sports cars, and Eastwood made sure the world saw just how special it was. 4. 1966 Morris Mini Countryman Cooper. In 1966, John Cooper applied the same motorsport magic and mischief that had made the Mini Cooper S a Group 2 rally-winning supercar to the Mini Traveler. The combination of the Mini Cooper and the practicality of a tiny station wagon created this beauty, the 1966 Morris Mini Countryman Cooper S. This diminutive 2-door estate car with its rear barn doors was a tiny cult classic, and of the 6 Cooper S Travelers ever made, 2 were rumored to have been owned by Steve McQueen, and 1 was snapped up by Clint Eastwood. We say snapped because Clint once used this car in the filming of Where Eagles Dare. Sometime later, he happened to stumble upon it, but what he stumbled upon was in a very bad condition. It didn't even have an engine. The car must have made an impression while he was filming because he quickly tracked down the original engine from Australia and began the restoration. Originally, the Cooper S Travelers were all offered in Old English white, but customers were offered a respray in any color of their choosing. Having decided to paint his wagon, Clint went for British Racing Green. 3. GMC Typhoon. In 2016, Clint Eastwood was invited to Jimmy Fallon's show, and he accepted. One of the questions Jimmy asked Clint was, "What car do you drive?" Clint, 85 years old at the time, said, "I drive a GMC Typhoon. It's out of production now. It's actually a turbo V6. It's fast." Clint wasn't kidding. He owns not one but several GMC Typhoons, and it's not hard to see why. The GMC Typhoon is a high-performance SUV released in 1992 that came with a serious 4.3-liter V6 engine that could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.3 seconds. Only 4,697 were ever made, making it a very rare SUV. On several occasions, Clint has specifically praised the turbocharged V6 engine and the vehicle's speed, which is often surprising for an SUV. He even had a green one featured in the 1997 film Absolute Power. The Typhoon's blend of utility and performance aligns with Eastwood's taste for powerful, yet practical vehicles. 2. 1937 Lincoln K-Series Convertible. In 1982, Clint Eastwood stepped into one of his most soulful roles, Honky Tonk Man. He played a fading country singer, dying of tuberculosis, who sets out on one last road trip across Depression-era America. But it wasn't just the story that stole the spotlight. It was the car, a 1937 Lincoln K-Series Convertible, a machine that defined elegance long before Clint ever touched it. First launched in 1931, the Lincoln Model K was pure craftsmanship, a 6.8-liter V12 engine wrapped in Art Deco curves and quiet confidence. An old advertisement once described it perfectly. It surges lightly, swiftly ahead with a touch of the accelerator. Shifting is smoother, springs are more flexible, modern beauty achieved without losing dignity. And that's exactly how it felt. When the cameras stopped rolling, Clint wasn't ready to say goodbye. He bought the car. He didn't care that it was decades old. He loved it too much to leave it behind. For him, the Lincoln wasn't just a prop, it was a time machine. When he pressed the accelerator, that massive V12 didn't just move, it roared. While other classics sputtered and chugged, this one glided past like a ghost from a faster, freer America. Back in the 1930s, Rolls-Royce owned the reputation for luxury. But this Lincoln? It was American royalty, smooth, powerful, and dignified. A perfect fit for Clint Eastwood, a man who's always driven straight into history without ever looking back. On Gran Torino Sport. At age 78, Clint Eastwood was still going strong on screen. He starred and directed a movie with a car in the title, Gran Torino. The movie is about a curmudgeonly racist white guy who befriends his Asian neighbors in a story of gang rivalry and redemption. However, the best supporting character is the eponymous 1972 Gran Torino that is the protagonist's pride and joy. An American muscle car with that classic Coke bottle styling, it was called Torino after the city of Turin, which was considered the Italian Detroit. Before filming started on Gran Torino, Eastwood's production company sourced it through a classic car dealer on eBay, and Warner Bros. Bought it and had it tidied up for its role. When the film wrapped, Eastwood bought it and added it to his collection. The Gran Torino Sport packed up to 248 horsepower from its 351 Cleveland V8. Back in its prime, this thing could hit 60 miles per hour in just 7.7 seconds. Muscle cars were fading by the late 70s, but this one stood tall. That's all for the 10 rarest cars in Clint Eastwood's collection. Which of these are your favorites? Let us know in the comment section below.